Hey guys, welcome to class. So I'm going to go through the syllabus in this video, and for 99% of you, you don't have to watch this because we're going to watch it, or we're going to talk about this stuff on Monday and Wednesday, depending on what class you're in, which will make sense why I'm doing this for both classes in a second. But this is mostly for the one or two people who have not, who are doing this class a little bit differently because of unique circumstances. So if you don't want to watch this, don't want to waste your time before class hearing the same stuff again, then just stop doing this and we'll cover everything next week when we get to class. If you do want to watch it so that you can make sure everything makes sense, this class is kind of complicated and I'll try and be as clear as I possibly can. So you're welcome to watch this or skip it. It doesn't really matter. I am going to start posting lectures on Canvas so that you can watch them in advance of the following week, which will make sense in a little bit when I explain how this class works. But for now, just skip it, do some self-care, take care of yourselves, enjoy the cold weather. It's literally, I'll show you, -16 below, feels like -30, whatever, 38. Pretty wild, okay? You might also notice that I'm wearing headphones because I'm just kind of toying around with a new idea. If you see up here in the top corner, I have Gemini from the Google Chrome browser. And every so often, I thought if I'm at home by myself and you guys aren't here to ask questions or clarify things, instead of Googling stuff, which sometimes we do in class, I'll just ask Gemini to help me out. So Gemini, are you there? Hey, Gemini, are you there? Okay, my Wi-Fi kind of sucks. This kind of sucks this morning. So we're just going to skip that. Probably I'll just take these off and ignore the AI and not mess around with crap that we don't need. Anyway, without further ado, let's jump into the thingy, whatever it is, the syllabus. Let's make it a little bit bigger. So I'm not going to go through all of these things, especially since this is mostly just for a couple of you. You guys know how to read a syllabus for the most part, and if you don't, that's okay. I'll help you out through the class. It's kind of the point of me telling you the important things. The one thing to note up here at the top is that, well, actually, I will say one thing first. If nobody's told you this before, make sure you save every syllabi from every class that you have. It doesn't seem like it might be that important now, but these things work as a record for when you get to licensing. If they ever ask you, like, how can you prove that you've taken these classes? Your transcript will show you what's on the class, but the syllabus is what shows you what content is necessary. So I recommend like printing this, saving it, putting it on your computer, and like having it in a couple different spots just so you can have it just in case, because it's never like right away after graduation. It's always like 10 years down the line when you move to Nebraska or whatever the heck place you're going to go. And then the licensing board says, well, prove it, So just a word of wisdom, I guess. So the one thing I want to show you here is that this class is offered. There's two different classes. I'm keeping you both in Canvas in the same way, and I'm essentially going to teach the same exact class to both of you, but it's going to be on Monday afternoons and Wednesday evenings. So they never work out to be exactly the same, but I'm going to try and keep them as much as I can. The reason they're not always the same is because you guys are getting interested in different things, and so I kind of tailor each class to the culture of who's there. Sometimes there's more school counselors in one class, and sometimes people are more interested in the diagnoses or the attachment stuff or whatever. So as much as I can, I try and structure it at the beginning the same, and then tailor it to your needs as we go up through the class. So note that I'm doing that, and if you have questions and you start asking people from the other section, then you might get different answers, and that's kind of why. Although I'll try to be as consistent as I can about due dates and that kind of stuff. So I'll use announcements on Canvas here to let you know what is happening there. I'll skip past all this stuff. The course descriptions. The book, we will be using this book, and I will follow it pretty closely with the lectures. There are going to be a bunch of additional optional readings. Just know that the only really required reading is this textbook, and that's the thing you should focus on the most. However, all this optional stuff is like supplemental, complementary kind of things as we go out through the class. You'll see, I'll say again in a bit, that I really hope that I can tailor the class to you guys and your interests. And then I hope you can tailor this, what you take out of it, to your own future career paths. So I'll provide some things for you that might be of interest, and I'll also provide crap that you don't care about. You don't have to care about it, or you can just log it and save it away for a rainy day in 10 years when you decide it's important to you then. This class is filled with stuff. Like, there's tons of content to know about, and likely you'll get a little bit overwhelmed with if you try to do all of it. So I'm really going to help you throughout the first couple weeks, especially to just temper your expectations a little bit so that you take in what you need to, save the rest for another time, and really try and work on those boundaries with yourself and what things you take in and how you prioritize your wellness and your own interests and that kind of stuff. So not something we typically do. Usually we say, do everything. You have to be responsible for everything and also take care of yourselves, which is unrealistic and it doesn't work, right? We all get stressed out when we feel responsible for everything. So this one's going to be pretty important because it's going to help you pass the national exams. And that's one of the goals of the class, is to help you get through the assessment stuff when you take your exams. Also, to be a competent counselor, but there's lots of different kinds of counselors, which is where the supplemental readings come in. If you're doing school counseling, you don't need to care about diagnosis because you don't do it. If you're specializing in OCD, you don't need to care about autism assessments, right? So like, you want to know basic level stuff, but you don't have to be an expert in it. And that's the point. So this one you'll want to have access to. It'll help you on the tests, and you just kind of need it. So just know that. Here are a few optional readings. We are going to be writing one big report at the end of the semester, which I'll go through in a little bit. This is kind of interesting if you want to do some report writing and include assessment. I recommend not buying it at first. I have a copy of it and I can show it to you or let you use it or whatever. If you find out that it's going to be helpful to you, then you can buy it, but I wouldn't buy it at the beginning because it's just a waste of money if you don't need it. I'll also tell you why you might want to buy that too, but I'll do that later sometime in class. And then for those of you who are doing clinical work, this one is actually a lot better than the textbook that we have required for the class. The reason I use the one required for the class is because that textbook helps. It's sort of more of a well-rounded focus on what assessment is from like a scientific perspective, a historical too even. But this book really focuses on how do you use clinical content to make diagnostic decisions. And so that's a little bit more relevant if you're going to be working in private practice or doing therapy work. So I also have a copy of this. So I'll show it to you and you can use it and decide if you want to buy it or not. And then if you're a school counselor, you'll be doing a lot more career related stuff, probably helping people make college decisions and, decide on future careers and building their occupational identity. I don't know how much, I know Ola teaches the career class and she covers a lot of this stuff. My background is in rehab counseling, and so we'll do one week towards the end of the semester where we'll talk about career counseling, career assessment. But most people generally think it's not the most interesting, it's not the most important, and yet we skim over it and skip it sometimes, probably to our detriment, meaning people have a lot of career interests when they come into counseling, or they want to focus on their work or their jobs. And this can be really valuable stuff, but we don't tend to teach a lot of it. And people don't tend to get interested in it. So when it comes to the real work and you're like, oh crap, what do I do with this? So I will talk to you more about that if you want to, but I don't have a lot of time in class intended to focus on it. But this is a book that can be helpful for that. So required technology, who cares? We know all that stuff. These things are important mostly for us as a program and for our accreditation, but this section can be really important too when you get to licensing. If they say like, did you cover this content? This is what is really valuable then. So this is the kind of crap you need to save. I shouldn't say crap. It's not crap. It's good stuff, but it's not really the most interesting or relevant to you right now. So interesting to us, I guess. Okay. So we are going to meet. I want to talk to you about this course. I'm not going to read this whole thing though, but we're going to meet for 2 hours. Some of you on Monday, some of you on Wednesday. And I'm going to do what's called a flipped classroom, which means they're going to be, what are you doing? Oh, this is my son. He's laughing at me, I'm in an empty room in my basement right now, which you guys can't see. And he's now making fun of me because this is my work. What do you want to say to him? Nothing inappropriate. That's it? Okay. Great. See you later.
Bye.
I'll be up in a little bit. So we are going to that's just totally distracting, but kind of funny. So the flipped classroom means that you guys are going to be watching the video of the lecture in advance of the class, and I highly recommend that you keep some questions down. A lot of you listen to this like in your car when you're doing workouts or washing dishes or whatever. And then you'll come to class and we'll actually do the work. Traditionally, it's been you come to class for a lecture, do a little bit of discussion or whatever, and then you go home and write papers. This is kind of flipping that backwards. So we'll spend most of our class time having discussions and working on projects. And I'm not going to talk a ton about this right now, but one of the things historically that's been really important is getting you like in labs and working with the assessment tools. But the assessment world has changed so much, especially post-COVID, and the way we deal clinically with stuff has just changed so much. And I'll talk more about that later, but it's really hard to get you with hands-on tools to use. So I'll try and do as much of that as I can, but really I just want to like cover things in a wide swath of exposure to different kinds of assessment processes and different ways of thinking and understanding your own way of working. So that it's probably pretty unclear at this point, but I'll make sure that gets clear. We'll talk about that day one for most of you. And then I think that's all I want to say for that part. I'm going to skip over these expectations for now, I think. A lot of this is just like official language, like that in short says, show up, do your best work. If you don't, we'll talk about it. I'll help you understand all this stuff. It's like policy language. And also don't be a jerk to other people, which is what this Title IX thing's like. It's about, sexual harassment and stuff. Like most of you don't need to hear that. Some of you might, but I'm not going to cover it now because it gets covered a lot of places. There's always something that comes up with people. Most often when people aren't successful in this class or frankly any other class, it's because you have outside life stuff going on and it's overwhelming and it's stressful and it distracts you from being able to do your best work here. I'm happy to talk to you about that. I also respect your privacy and your distance. And so if you have stuff going on, you don't have to tell me. But if you do, I can be helpful, especially I'm happy to hear what's going on in your lives and I will talk to you about it, absolutely. But if you don't want to share that stuff and you're like, I'm not ready to, I feel ashamed of it or whatever the thing is, then you're welcome to just, the sneaky little gnome is hiding again. You're welcome to just not tell me what's going on, but also I can talk to you about what's going on in the class and then tell you what you need to catch up on or how to handle being behind on assignments or whatever. Do you want to just come in here or do you want to keep sneaking around?
Around.
All right. Okay, we'll skip the grading thing. We'll talk about that later because I always end up talking about it, but it's not until like halfway through the semester when people start missing assignments for things. So I'll talk about grade policy later. The gist of it is I want you to be successful, do a good job. So you'll always have the opportunity to get points. And sometimes I'm going to recommend just skipping assignments and focusing on things that come up in your lives that are important. So there's that. Okay, I'm going to skip down to the schedule because that's really the important thing that most of you care about. And these different assignments will make sense as we get there. Here's a point breakdown, which I'm not even 100% confident I have all this correct. So sorry. This class has gotten a little more complicated over the years, and translating this to Canvas and making sure all the numbers are the same and which assignments are there is a little bit tricky, but are you bored? Okay. Well, do you want to play Catan when I am done? Okay. All right. We started playing Settlers of Catan over the break, and I've been telling everybody this because I'm so excited about it. I bought that game when I was like 10 years ago. Tried to get my wife to play with me, and she wouldn't because there's only two of us, and now he's old enough to play it, so we've been playing it like crazy. And it's awesome. I love it so much. Okay. So This will all make sense. It looks like a lot of stuff, and it really is, but it'll all make sense. And we might not even do all of it, depending on what we find to be important. And I'll ask you guys to help me decide what's important too. So again, this is one of the things that has potential to make the class a little bit overwhelming, but I will help you navigate through this and tell you why things are important and let you decide if you think you need to do them or not, or if we want to collectively spend our time on that. So actually, this might be a good time to talk about something, just the philosophy of the class. So historically, assessment has meant test booklets, not so much computer assessments, but now that's more a part of it. It's meant statistical foundations. It has meant evaluation using numbers to quantify the stuff that's going on in people's heads and in their social lives and that kind of thing. And it has meant gathering information through a process of like objective evaluation. In other words, like if I have to make a diagnosis, I need something to help me gather information. All of that is going to be a part of the class. And that's what historically the counseling field has focused on. And psychology. For the last 100 years, people have been saying we need a process to evaluate people through time, from one time point to another, and over space, meaning understand conditions across America, across the world, across the human condition even. And that is wonderful. And there's really important place for that. And I'm going to argue that that's the thing that most of you expect and the thing that you think is dumb for most of you. There's always a few people who are like, I love that part of it. I do as well. But there's another part to this. So one of our themes throughout the class, like one track of what we're going to be focusing on, is that stuff. We're going to be scientists. We're going to be objective. We're going to step out of our own biases and look at something and say, is this something of a concern? Is this a pathology? Is this something that's really difficult and troubling in a person's life? And think about that through with a little bit of a distance. Then there's another part of counseling that involves really getting into a person's internal emotional world, empathizing with them, holding space for their pain. And we use these kind of abstract analogies to say, I want to understand the interpersonal impact on this person's life and what pain looks like and feels like. Can you not be distracting, dude? You're going to come in here, do it. Otherwise, stay with me. You can stay, just like popping in. It's freaking me out a little bit. Okay. So when it comes to your, by the way, part of the reason I'm doing this, he won't show up in these most of the time. He's off school today because it's -1,000,000 below or whatever it is. So
-39.
39. Yeah, I showed him the picture of the phone. It's 38. So anyway, so we have, on one hand, we have this theme of being the scientist and this theme of being the humanist, which is getting involved in people's lives, understanding their pain, and then really knowing how to draw out stuff that people don't know how to talk about, like their attachment relationships and how they've developed these coping strategies because of past responses to difficult situations, and then how it's impacting things currently, and then ultimately, what are the interventions? What are we going to do about it? So sitting with people's difficult lives and difficult situations, that's what this other theme is about. And so we're going to spend some time on that one too. So when I talk about getting your hands on assessment tools, but it's also changing, it's a little bit different. It's that stuff that people want, that I think most of you guys want to know about and want to do, which is why we're going to do the lectures, focus on the textbook, learn about the scientific expectations of the class and how to pass all the tests and all that kind of stuff. You'll get that content. And for you specifically, Refillaway, that's going to be the stuff that you're going to focus on the most. Most of you don't have to care about that. And then during class, we'll spend most of our time doing just practices, like how do we understand suicide risk assessments, and how do we talk to another person and understand how to ask questions to draw out the information, that's the assessment, how to draw out the information that we need in order to be able to help them in a really meaningful way. So that's that part. So most of class time is going to be in discussion, really trying to like suck the marrow out of this process, out of the counseling process, to really get deep and understand, like, what are we really doing here? That's what I want to do in class. And then I'm going to try and pepper you with as much content as possible to help you understand the other parts of assessment. The other thing that's not really a main theme, but it's in the back of my mind, and I hope it's in the back of yours, is you thinking about your future career and what parts of this class, all this stuff that we have here, and all the optional readings and all that stuff, if you don't need certain parts of the class, I want to help you figure out what parts those are so you can say, I just don't want that, right? So if we're talking about the statistics chapter and you're like, this has no relevance to my life, either I'm going to tell you, actually it does, and here's how I'm going to help you understand why, and you can choose if it is, or I can say, probably you don't need to care about this. So read along as much as you can. You want to pass the test and all that stuff, but also maybe that's not where you put all your energy that week, and that's okay, right? It's a hard transition for people to say, you mean I don't have to meet everybody's expectations all the time, especially mine as the professor? And my answer is, well, most of the time people expect you to, but this time I'm going to say, no, just give yourself a break and choose how to understand what's relevant to you for your career. Part of that is because we take in so much information as clinicians and as clients, and some of it we just have to disregard and put aside. And it's how we figure out through the assessment process what information matters and what information doesn't. So this is kind of paralleling that thing for you to make decisions for yourself about what matters to me and what doesn't. It's clinical, it's educational, it's just part of the process. It's also freaking hard. So, oh, sorry, cover your ears. I'm saying naughty words. Is frick a swear word?
No.
Okay, then I didn't. Never mind.
Because people at school, there was one person who said, winner, chicken dinner, the teacher, and then someone said, winner, frickin' dinner.
Winner, frickin' dinner?
Yeah.
All right.
That's not bad. People say it at school and they don't get in trouble.
Okay, well, everybody in this class is going to be a winner, frickin' dinner for the whole semester. How about
Okay.
that? Sound all right? Okay, so let's talk about the schedule. So I have a few things to show you. Oh, well, one thing I'll say is last semester, some of you were in ethics and some of you were in other classes. And one of the things I got on my evaluations was I was a bit disorganized at times. And maybe that was an understatement. So, and it totally was. I've been disorganized in my life, and that's a whole nother story, but I will save that for another day. But what I've really tried to do is just sort of ground myself in what the organization of the class is. And I'm bringing back the color coding, folks, because I took it away because it didn't make any sense. But here's a color key to help you guys. And I don't know if this is helpful or not, but I know a few of you appreciate color coordination. So there's nothing really else to say about this. But the one thing that is important is the way it's set up in Canvas and the due dates. It's a little messy because you guys are taking the class at different days. Some of you Monday, some of you Wednesday. So every new week is going to start on Monday. Yeah?
I'm going to go back up.
Okay, have fun. Every new class is going to start on Monday, which means Sunday night at 12 a.m. or whatever, Monday morning, 12 a.m. I'm going to open up the new content. So those of you, and I'm happy to do it earlier if you guys want to, I just don't want to be too confusing. But some of you who are in the Monday class, you'll have access to the stuff of the week Monday morning. Like the new content will open up and new quizzes and that kind of stuff. That's just an effort to help you guys stay on track of like what's due and what's not. So I'm not throwing it all at you, right? And you have to decide what reflection quiz to do or what assignments due that week. And then everything is going to be due on Tuesday night at 11:59. Okay, so it's going to open up Sunday morning, be open for whatever 8 days or something like that, in 9 days, whatever it is, and then be due on Tuesday night. That's for the Wednesday class, so they can have everything due right before their class on Tuesday night. So Monday, you're going to get it a little bit later. So Wednesday class, you're going to have it opened up a few days earlier, which hopefully that's not too confusing. But then it's going to be due on Tuesday night before your class. Monday, it's going to open up not quite as early, and it'll be due a little bit earlier. After that class. I highly recommend for you Monday class people to get your stuff in on Sunday night and just use that week cycle so that you don't get to class, learn about new stuff, talk about new assignments, and then still have to work on the past week's assignments for the next day. It's there for you. You have some flexibility and due dates, all that kind of stuff. But also I highly recommend you set some structure for yourself, even if it's not due. It's a good task to learn how to do. Most of us are procrastinators and don't do it until the pressure's on anyway. And we let other people set our external expectations instead of having internal ones. If you can get organized and hold yourself to your own expectations, life goes so much easier, I promise you. But you do you, right? Okay. Now let's talk about from week to week. I'm going to first sort of zoom out, pull back, and do a high level overview of the entire semester. So for the first couple weeks, it doesn't really show on here what these chapters are about, but this is just like, we're going to just do some introductory discussions, talk about the syllabus day one. Then we're going to go into history and legal and ethical foundations. Then we're going to talk about testing with diverse populations, which some of you are going to love that. Some of you are going to not love it. I talk about this a little bit differently than in most classes, but I'll give you the gist of it now. Everybody is different in unique ways, and we also all have similarities in unique ways. And we talk about diversity. Oftentimes we have these socially charged, politically charged discussions about one population that some political agenda has focused on being disadvantaged or something. And those things matter. And I'm going to choose to talk about them slightly differently. In other words, everybody that you sit across from, you're going to understand parts of them. And there are going to be parts that are unique and different that you won't know about. And so we're going to focus on diversity as a practice of being curious about different people, whether you have political or your own biases against or toward them, whatever. It's not really helpful to have too much affection towards somebody or like too much affinity or I like you before I even know you. That can cause clinical challenges. Same thing if you have biases against people, right? So we're going to talk about it a little bit differently, and we'll mostly pepper that throughout the entire course. So I'll explain more when we get there. So this is all just kind of foundational principles, stuff that you think you know about, but I'm going to try and challenge you to think about things in a slightly different way. Then we have what I call what do I call this? It's like a mini subunit or a few weeks of assessments, statistical stuff. This is, other than the research class, this is kind of the majority of the statistics you're going to get through the program. I don't focus on you knowing statistics. This is part that freaks everybody out. They see that word and they're like, "Oh my gosh, what are we going to do?" I'm not going to ask you to do the math. I'm going to ask you to understand how you use numbers and statistical information and know what you're talking about enough to make clinical decisions. So you're not going to be a producer of the math or the statistics. You're going to be a consumer of it to make clinical decisions. So this is not as scary as you think. There is a quiz, and I promise you people do fine on the quiz. They do well enough, and it's okay. Even if it's not okay and you're like, I hate statistics, it's the worst thing, you're probably too hard on yourself and you probably have a bias against it and just have a bad attitude about it. And you'll still get an okay grade in the class and you'll be fine. Like you'll be okay. And I think you'll probably be trained in statistics better than other people because you'll get things that are relevant to you. So we'll see if I can follow through on that promise, but whatever. So we have a couple weeks of that. Once that's done, we're going to talk about picking test and scoring test and interpreting results. And this is all still just kind of like foundational stuff. And then using assessment tools to make clinical decisions. And then communicating assessment results, both written, verbal, all that kind of stuff. So this is all just sort of like, I don't want to say entry level or basic because it's not, it's complicated, but at the same time, it's like just covering the ground floor of what we're doing here. And then we have spring break. So about halfway through the class, we're going to switch gears and we're going to go through clinical assessment. For all you therapists, this is going to be your most interesting part, or the most interesting week probably. Personality assessment and education, particularly for you school counselors. Aptitude, career, intelligence, substance use. We're just going to cover like different topics for the remainder of the semester. Okay. Then going back up to the top. So for this first half, when we're covering basic content or entry content, foundational content, that's the word I want to use. While we're doing that, we're going to do different kinds of assessment. Most of you have heard of adverse childhood experiences. PACEs is a more current and contemporary understanding of protective factors, adverse childhood experiences. So not just like what things impact a person's health negatively, but also what are protective factors to impact a person's health positively. So if people have good relationships, they carry social capital, which is a term that we'll talk about later, meaning they can withstand hardship a little better, right? So if somebody loves you, you tend to deal with attachment problems later on a little better. You can cope with things better, right? You learn healthy strategies. Then we'll do a few more activities in class, discussions, that kind of thing. We'll go over some of these assessments that many of you have used already, but not fully. I'm pretty sure of that. The Beck's Depression Inventory, the PHQ, those are depression scales. GAD-7, anxiety scales. We'll go over some other sort of like basic ones. Most of you in your clinical work will probably stop there. You're not going to use a whole lot of other tools specifically. And a lot of clinicians even right now are like, no, we don't use anything. Oh, maybe we use the PHQ or something, but we just kind of do it for insurance and let it go. It's like, that's kind of a reality of what it's like out there. So I'll cover those, and you can decide for yourself how much you want to use those and where they're important and that kind of thing. Then, as we're talking about statistics, we'll pull out some test manuals and help you use that. For some of you, you're going to be asked in your professional capacity to like find a way to assess all of the clients at a particular place, or if you're in a school, you need to understand how to read educational assessments so you can help interpret them to parents and that kind of stuff. So we'll go through some test manuals and let you take a look at what those are like. Everybody hates this assignment. I've done it a couple times and it's not fun per se, but after you do it, you might be like, oh, I see why I need to learn more about that, or how I need to like spend a little more time on that later on, or at least know a little bit of where to find things so later on I can go learn it. So then very importantly, we're going to go through suicide risk assessment. That's kind of a hard week, but it's also a really good, important one. Some of you are in internship right now. Some of you are in practicum. Most of you have taken the crisis class with Ola, and she's gone through this with you. We're going to do it again, and we're going to walk through how do you do a suicide risk assessment. We're going to practice that. And it's never like the real thing, but it's important that we cover that again. Then the week that I think is probably the most interesting, the most relevant to most of us, is trauma assessment. The CAPS-5 is specifically following the diagnostic criteria for PTSD. But then we're going to talk about adult attachment through this AAI tool that I don't really know a whole ton about, but I think it's going to be relevant, and I'll tell you why when we get there. But then we're just going to talk about ways of understanding trauma, and then how do we bring that into our lives. We all use this word. We have since the 90s, trauma-informed care, trauma-informed care. And yet I don't think we all really have we couldn't say in a couple sentences, like, what does this actually mean for the way we work? And how do we actually use trauma information to make relevant clinical decisions? I still think even clinicians struggle with how to actually do that. So we're going to use a tool, and then we're just going to think conceptually of what is attachment, how do we understand it, and how does it impact our clinical decision making? That's the point. Okay, and then all this orange stuff, this is where my color coding comes in. All this orange stuff is when we're going to start the final project. I'm going to introduce it before spring break so that you can use spring break to anticipate how you're going to organize this for yourself. We're going to find a mock client. I'm going to zoom in again. We're going to find a mock client, and then for the rest of the semester, we're going to have one mock client. We're going to have several weeks where we're going to be writing different parts of the assessment. So we're not going to like have a huge project due at the end of the semester. We're going to chip away at it in little pieces. It's slow, it's long, it's not going to, you're never going to write a paper this big again in your life. Well, that's not true. You're never going to write an assessment report. Some of you might actually do that, but very few of you are going to do that. But we really want to like get a big picture view of all the important things so that later on you can say, I see how these fit, and here's why I don't need this one right now, or I do need this other one. It's also just how we communicate what you know and what you don't know, okay? So we're going to be doing a kind of a family history, understanding why people are in counseling in the first place, like what they want to get out of it. We're going to understand what a mini mental status exam is, and a lot of you will see those. Not a lot of you will write them, but you need to understand them. Some other things that are relevant to clinical decision making. Then we're going to actually practice some tools that you have available to you. And I'm going to show you something. Actually, I'll show you right now. This is your Canvas page. One of the things I've done over the years is I've just collected all the tools that students use, a bunch of them that I've seen people use, and tried to just say, where do you find things and what's important to you? So in Canvas, there's this Google Drive assessment toolbox. I'll even click on it. And in there, I've just been dumping different relevant tools and trying to organize them as well as I can. So, for example, if you're looking for something related to addiction or adverse childhood experiences, career inventory, depression, anxiety, emotional management skills, like all this stuff, if you have something that's not in here that you use, send it to me because I want to keep it. I want to have a library going. If you want, just download this whole stinking thing and keep it for yourself. You know what I mean? So like this, when we get to the final project, I'm gonna zoom back out here. When we get to the final project, then you'll have a place to go to look for things, okay? At least one option. It's not gonna have everything, but it'll have some things. So then we're gonna actually use those tools with our mock client and just get practice on like administering them and then using them in a report and how we're thinking about a diagnosis. For a lot of you, it's going to be diagnosis. For you career counselors, or sorry, school counselors, might be a little different. You might not focus on diagnosis so much. That's okay. There are other ways that you can conceptualize care later. And then we'll come up with some conclusions. Now, in practice, the way this works is someone sits from across from you. You have about 45 minutes to gather a whole bunch of background information. Usually we follow a sheet that says, tell me about your family, tell me about your schooling, tell me about your symptoms, tell me about this and that. And you just collect a whole crap load of information. And then you're supposed to make a diagnosis like that. And this process kind of is slowing that whole thing down over the course of weeks instead of doing it in 45 minutes. And then at the end, you're supposed to say, what's your treatment plan and what's a diagnosis? So sometimes the conclusion is you have this disorder. I'm going to send that off to insurance. But the way that you talk about that with clients might be, I see you're coping with this through using anger as trying to be a solution for this frustration with your wife. But your wife really isn't the problem. It's the way you dealt with your mother. And now it's showing up with your wife, and the anger is really the problem. And we're going to focus on that. You know what I mean? That's not the diagnosis. But that's the way, diagnosis is the way we communicate clinically with insurance and the billing system and other providers and that kind of thing. But the way you communicate with clients is different. Here again, we see those two themes of the scientist and the humanist, okay? So we're going to go through those conclusions. It doesn't necessarily need to be a diagnosis, but for a lot of you, it will be. Both of those things, maybe. And then recommendations. What's the treatment? If anger is the problem, what do we do about it? If it's depression and it's the symptoms, then how do we treat that? It's making those kind of decisions is what we're going to focus on the last part. And then we'll upload it and show our best work to Chalk and Wire, the thing that all of us have a love-hate relationship with. We'll say that. And then the final, I'll say more about the final, but the final's not a big thing to scare you, and it's kind of open book and all that kind of stuff. So that should be pretty easy. The hardest things are going to be the things that I can't really evaluate, and that's how you make decisions about what you want to do with your career and what you take out of the class and what things impact you in meaningful ways. Okay, so let's, we're almost done here, but let's talk about some of these specific assignments and what they are and get you used to the flow of class, because one thing I like for you to take away from this first session or the first week is what do you need to be doing specifically and what's class going to be like for you. It's going to take a few weeks to figure that out, always does, but I want to get you into that as quickly as possible. So week one, again, if you're watching this still, good on you, but we're going to cover all this again. There's nothing due for week one. You don't have to complete anything before class. We're going to do a syllabus quiz, which isn't even a quiz, but it's kind of more of like an agreement that you understand enough of what's going on and what to do about it if you don't. So that's just an easy thing. I'll just take a few minutes. Then when we get to class the next week, you will have watched a video on chapters 1 and 2. You will have read the book, and you'll kind of have that part of the content, and we'll get to class and we'll talk about it. I'm also going to show you, since this is about ethics and law and a legal and historical perspectives of counseling, assessment, that kind of stuff, I'm also going to show you assessment related stuff that you need to know as a person, a clinician in Wisconsin. So that's what these links are. It's to like government regulations and that kind of stuff. Not the most fun, but I'll show you how to use them so you know what you can and can't do, because that's one of the big questions. What can I even do? Can I do complicated intelligence assessments? No, because you're not trained to do the really complicated ones, and it might be unethical to use a really powerful assessment tool that could do more harm than good. And On the flip side, some of us get so nervous about doing any assessment that we're like, I'm just not even going to go there because I don't feel confident in it. And so that's something we want to just at least be thinking about right away. So we'll do a little activity. The challenge with this is that I have to be gone for like a conference meeting kind of thing on Wednesday. So Wednesday class, we won't even have the second week of class. So I'll give you more information about what to do that week, but probably we're going to have nothing due that week or just a little reflection paper kind of thing. The Monday class, we have a candidate for a faculty candidate coming in, and she's going to spend an hour in our class giving a guest lecture. I don't know if she's going to cover this same question or not. We've been kind of talking back and forth, but she's going to come and like kind of do something in class. And so basically none of you are going to have a lot of time in class to work through this stuff. But that's what's happening second week. So that's kind of the only important thing in terms of like what's class going to be like throughout the semester. Otherwise, I plan on being here every week, and we'll kind of get into a routine after week 2 probably. These reflection quizzes are the other important thing. So if you've had class with me before, it's the same exact thing. If you haven't, then you'll learn very quickly what this means. It's not even really a quiz. It doesn't even say quiz. I think I took that language out because it's not a quiz. It's just 5 minutes at the end of class or recommended 5 minutes at home or whatever, just to sort of think through what you've been working on that week. And there's some more instructions I'll tell you later. But it's kind of more like a 5-minute journal. This also helps me. I'll tell you this. You can talk about the content of the week, what was surprising, interesting, what doesn't make sense, what do you want to know more about, questions about any of the stuff that you've been thinking through the week. This is also a great place to, while you're watching the lectures and reading things, kind of note down what you might want to talk about in these reflection quizzes or ask in class. But if something's not clear to you or you want more information, this is where you can communicate to me if we're not talking about it in class. Some of you are talkers, some of you are introverts who don't talk as much, and you can still get your questions asked and oftentimes answered. I don't answer everything in these, but so the content of the course is what you can use these for. Also, you can tell me about things like what's working and what's not working with the course. The videos, I can't hear you speak, or your son is really funny looking and you shouldn't include him in your videos, whatever. I couldn't, I didn't have access to Canvas, or that person next to me smells funny and I don't want to sit next to him. Can I sit somewhere else? Or like anything about your access to the course and what's working and what isn't. Oftentimes the answers that I get for this part are like, oh, I'm so stressed out now. It's week 4 or 5 and I'm just like, sorry, I was focusing on something else, or I got sick, or, here's why I didn't hand in my assignment the best work I could. Or so number 1 is the content questions. Number 2 is the process of the class. And number 3 is just like, who are you and how are you doing? Sometimes I don't get a chance to get to know you that well, but through the reflections, I really get a sense of who you are and what maybe I could do to tailor the class to fit your needs uniquely and better. It's hard being a teacher because I have to teach the content that's important to other people, assuming that you guys care about it. But what I think really matters to me as a therapist myself, rehab counselor, done different counseling roles in the past, is that we want to tailor and individualize content of our sessions to clients, like what's going on in their life. In other words, as a teacher who is that counselor, I also want to make sure that I understand you well enough to teach you things that are important to you. So I want to get to know you guys, all of you individually. So whoever it is sitting behind the other side of the camera right now, what you do and what you know and what you want to get out of this class really matters to me. And sometimes I have a hard time getting to that. But these reflection quizzes are one way for me to really understand who you are and what you need out of the class. And this is where you can tell me. I don't even know what else to say about that right now, but I'll just leave it there. So use it as like a personal journal to just have 5 minutes to do whatever you need to write for the week, or sort of have a mindful moment or whatever, or spend it in prayer, whatever you do, and just think for a while and then say, this is what I want to say. This is how I want to spend my time, and just let me know about it. That's okay. So that's our communication portal through the semester that is really important to me. And I've heard from students countless times over the years that it's important to you guys too, if you use it. If you find it to be just tedious and obnoxious, then whatever, just treat it that way and I'll treat it that way. And I won't respond to you, and you can just do bare minimum and whatever. That's what you need to do, and that's kind of okay, right? Okay. I think I'm going to say I don't want to talk. We're not going to have 2 quizzes, by the way. That's there intentionally because I'll open it up a week early if you guys want to take it early, but probably don't want to because you're going to miss some of the content, but it's going to be there. That's why it's there. I'm going to save, I think, everything else. Oh, one other thing I think I will say is that the lectures for the week are going to be on Canvas. They're also on YouTube. So if you, the first week when you go to Canvas, you'll go click the link, it'll take you to YouTube. I highly recommend that you save, kind of make a mental note or subscribe or something to the YouTube channel, because there have been weeks in the past where I get deep into the semester and I start to lose track of things. This is my disorganization that I'm going to try and fight this year. But I start to lose track of things and I forget to update the link in Canvas, but I've uploaded the video to YouTube. And so just know that it's there. You should still be able to rely on Canvas, and that's my job to do that, but I make mistakes too. So know that that's how that works. I do that for accessibility because people have easier access to YouTube than they do other than just getting videos in Canvas. Sometimes they're hard to watch because you either have to download them, which takes a long time, or if you have accessibility issues at home, like connectivity issues, then sometimes the videos just suck and they skip and all that stuff. So I think that's kind of it. The rest of the semester is really going to be come to class, watch the videos, come to class, discuss, do a reflection quiz, go home. We're not going to get all the work done in class. A lot of it you'll have to do outside, but we'll do the activities in class, and you'll probably have to polish up stuff. People that do the work in class and try and rush through it and hand it in and get it done so they don't have homework tend to do less good work. But also, if that's what you need to do, that's what you need to do. Whatever, it's fine. You do you. Okay, I think that's it. The rest is policies, and then I use this as like the place that I write down the assignments so I can think through them. But so you can read those if you want, or just come to class and hear me talk about them, whatever, because they often change just slightly when we're in class because of the way the class is going and wanting to adjust a little bit. So you can read them if you want to, but you don't have to. So I think that's all I want to tell you. I'm looking forward to this class. Oh, I guess I'll say one last thing. This class tends to be one that people don't look forward to. And part of my goal that I set for myself when I started teaching this like 6 years ago or something was I want to make it relevant, number one, so you don't just slogging through information that doesn't matter to you. And number two, I want to make it a little bit fun and interesting. So my hope is that we get through the class, and I think I can do this for many of you, not everybody. Some of you are just going to not care, and I get that, whatever. But for the rest of you, I want you to come to the class and say, I thought this was going to be terrible, but by the end, I hope that you say, it actually wasn't so bad, or I actually kind of liked it, or I looked forward to it, or something like that. If you've had classes with me like ethics before, you have your own judgments about whether it was good or not. And for the rest of you that don't know me, then this is an opportunity for us to say, even if this is the dumbest, most worthless crap that we've ever learned in our life, how do we adjust our attitude to get the most out of it or use the time effectively? So I can help you do that too, because I took classes that I thought were so stupid and so dumb. Hey again. But instead of being angry at the class itself, I chose to put my attention and my attitude and use my heart to think about it in a different way so that I could not be angry, not be frustrated, and really get the best out of the class, or focus more on things that mattered more to me. And I didn't want to talk to my professors about that because I thought they'd be upset with me, and some of them actually were when I admitted to them that I didn't care about what they had to teach me and I just wanted to do something else that I thought was relevant. But if you are in that place where you're like, here's what I think is important, here's what I want to focus on, I'm happy to hear that. And I would love to adjust a little bit to say, well, then let's make it important for you so you don't have to spend this whole time wasting your money and your time and your energy. So, okay, I'm going to stop, and I will see you guys next week or whenever I see you. All right, bye.